Hello everyone, within today's program I would like to talk about the private healthcare in Vietnam. Currently, private healthcare in Vietnam is developing with the support from the Vietnamese government and is the foundation for the private healthcare in Vietnam to develop strongly in the future. So now I focus on the private healthcare in Vietnam currently. Currently in Vietnam, we have two systems of healthcare, public hospital and private hospital. Regarding the number and the hospital beds, public hospitals are dominant. It's different from the other nations, while the private hospitals are dominant. But in Vietnam, the public hospitals play the key role. Regarding the total number of hospitals in Vietnam, public hospitals have about 1,150 hospitals, while there are 250 private hospitals, accounting for only 18%. And second, regarding the total number of hospital beds, public hospitals have 235,000 beds, while there are 15,000 beds in the private hospitals. The hospital bed ratios in Vietnam for the private hospitals is only 6%. It's too small compared to the other nations in Southeast Asia. And now, we can compare so that we can see that the public hospitals are prioritized, but the private hospitals have to do on their own, and they have to take care of their land, human resources, and financial resources. So that's the reason why the private hospitals in Vietnam only accounts for 6% regarding the hospital beds. It's irrational when being compared to Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. It's very unfair in Vietnam. So how about the private hospitals in Vietnam? Since the 1990s, the legal corridors are lacking. We only had some private hospitals in Vietnam in the 1990s, and that's the point to limit the private hospitals in Vietnam. But recently, while the Communist Party and the government of Vietnam focus more on the private hospitals in Vietnam developed strongly, and many corporations invest in the healthcare to have the professional system like Viện and Phát. Those are the hospitals to develop recently, and the number of hospitals, the private hospitals, developing strongly recently. Second, it's very different from the public hospitals. The private hospitals can target their segments and they choose the suitable segments for development. And the private hospitals have the breakthrough in attracting the experts. Now the private hospitals have many leading doctors and professors to serve the treatment. And we diversify the models and specialties. For example, ophthalmology or cardiology, etc. It's very different from the public hospitals. The public hospitals build a general hospitals, while the private hospitals choose the specific specialties, and the private hospitals reduce the pressure for the public hospitals. However, we still have many challenges for the private hospitals. The international experts may ask the question, why? Because the nations in Southeast Asia like Singapore, Malaysia and Thailand, the ratio of the private hospital is bigger than the public hospital, but in Vietnam it's different. And we have some challenges. The first challenge is the difference between the private hospitals. For example, the Viên Mác system, or the Hoàng Mỹ system, or the Phát Việt Tâm Anh system. They are at the higher segment, while many private hospitals are at the lower level. It's not the fair playing field for the private hospitals in Vietnam. Another challenge is the bias from the society. When we create the private hospitals, we face the bias from the society. Now Vietnamese people always think that when we go to the private hospitals, there will be no good doctors and they will incur the high expenses. And that's what we're facing.